I'm Nash Keyes. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. So late one night after a long day of school, like in the middle of winter, I think, I was at home brushing my teeth to get ready for bed, and looking in the mirror, and I saw something very clearly gender related, like in my face, that I had never really seen before. Things started to settle into place in my head. Like for the past few months, I had been like pulling my hair back and like taking selfies like that to see how I would look with short hair. And finally I was like, oh my God, there's something that I'm seeing in my own face that tells me like not girl. And I think part of me was definitely like, oh my God, am I a boy? But for the most part, it just felt like this very like overwhelming and scary and like blurry feeling of I don't know what gender identity means to me anymore. So that sort of uncertainty about my gender identity really followed me through high school, along with depression and other things that made life kind of difficult. But then I remember specifically junior year graduation. Like I went to an all-girls school for 13 years, K through 12, and in high school, like every year we'd go to graduation, and my school had decided long ago that graduation attire was going to be basically wedding dresses for everybody. So it was people walking down this aisle in big flowy white dresses. And I was sitting there in the audience, and it was like super hot out and I was miserable anyway, but I was looking at all these people going down this aisle in dresses, and I was like, oh my God, that's gonna be me next year. How am I gonna stand that? Like, that's not gonna be okay. As soon as I got home, it was just like really on my mind because of how uncomfortable I'd felt, and I was like, okay, I need to do something about this. So I sat down and wrote an email to the principal of my high school being like, listen, I was at graduation today and realized that I just cannot see myself wearing a dress to my graduation next year. And thankfully, like I had a really good relationship with this principal, and she emailed back saying like, I totally support you, you should talk to the head of school about it. So then I emailed the head of school and ended up scheduling a meeting for like the beginning of the summer. So I went in with my like little notebook with all my bullet points about like why I should be allowed to wear a suit. And ended up having this like pretty productive conversation with the head of school. But it was clear that the school had a lot of concerns about like donors and parents and alums who tended to be a little more on the conservative side than the student body. And so then I ended up having to set up a few more meetings over the rest of the summer to just like really get my point across. So I found out at the beginning of senior year that my efforts had actually worked, that the school was going to change the dress code. There were a few people who were like a little bit obnoxious about it, including this one alumni who said something along the lines of like, oh no, it'll like ruin the aesthetic of the whole thing. Like, why does this matter? I didn't really care because I already had sort of a bad relationship with that person. And I mostly just was hearing good things, including from some like underclassmen who were then like thinking about wearing suits themselves for their own graduation, which made me really excited. My senior year passed, I made a weekend expedition to go get a pure white suit and cummerbund and everything at Men's Warehouse. Then it was graduation day in early June. And so we all like got to school like 2 hours early or whatever, and all got ready together in this big room. I was just like in the corner putting on my suit, feeling really nervous about people's reactions and how the day would go. But then I like got my suit on and everyone was like, oh my God, you look so good. We all just like walked down the aisle, which like still was there and is a little weird. But like I just felt really like confident and like fully in my body, which is like something I've sort of struggled with. Like I just felt like I was okay and I was real, and that was where I should be. At graduation, the student council president gives like every year gives a speech, and my year the president was my best friend. And she like had this really great speech that like dealt with a lot of, or some tough things that had happened in our senior year really well, but also sort of talked about a lot of our sort of victories as a class. And one of them that she listed like was about me and like my changing the dress code. And I like broke down at that point. It just like meant a lot to me that she like just sort of took this thing that was so important to me and sort of made it part of a larger sort of thing about our class and the things that we had done. In this situation, I definitely felt like I had a lot of privileges. I mean, I'm white, I'm like financially well off and well educated, and I'd been at the school for a really long time, so I felt like going into that like situation of having this meeting, I had a lot of advantages. Also, like I feel like trans masculine people although many people still have a hard time, tend to face fewer like barriers and biases in certain ways than trans feminine people. So I kind of had that going for me as well. Looking back, I definitely feel like I'm really glad that I sort of put my privilege to work to enact positive change in that way. And I think now that I have sort of thought about that and realized that, I really want to continue to do that in the future to like uplift the voices of like trans feminine and people of color and like people who are not as economically well off.